Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I am your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today will be George Plaster of Nashville Sports Radio. We thank our presenting sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. Wellspire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We also thank our co-presenting sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Today's news brought to you by Sutherland & Belk, a Nashville-based injury law firm. Sutherland & Belk is committed to fighting for those who have been injured in car, motorcycle, and truck accidents. Check them out at sbinjurylaw.com. Vanderbilt men's basketball is back in action Wednesday night. The Commodores are 2-1. They have a home date with Austin Peay. Tip-off of that one is 7 p.m. Central. You can catch that on the SEC Network Plus, which is the online streaming version of the SEC Network. The guest line is brought to you by Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on those sheets for years. They're amazing and did not know what I was missing till I got them. They're fair trade certified, meaning they're made under safe conditions by men and women treated and paid fairly. Try them for a month. You can return them for free, but you won't want to. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com, that is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code VANDY and get $50 off your first set of sheets. George Plaster joins us now, and George, as we get this started today, there are just ominous signs all over the place. First of all, I disconnect our call 10 seconds in through hitting the wrong button, and I've only done this podcast like 1,000 times. So there's that, and there's also the fact that the Hermitage Captain D's burned down yesterday. So maybe these are signs. I don't know.
Yeah, that's terrible. I hated hearing that. But I guess life goes on.
Well, there's an inside joke there. There has been this on our message board, which I need to get you on, by the way. There have been these kind of culture jokes over the years. You have the people that grew up not going to Vanderbilt and maybe in less affluent areas of town who would lower themselves to eating at Captain D's. I would be one of those. And people who'd never be caught dead in one. So it's been kind of this funny cultural joke on our board for a while. And it's like when the Captain D's burned down yesterday, it's like, oh man, what else could go wrong?
Well, when you bring up Captain D's, the legendary late Lipscomb coach Don Meyer, supposedly that was his big hangout. I can remember he wanted to pick Willie Donick's brain one time about offensive things that Eddie Fogler was doing, and I think they met at a Captain D's. And so anytime Captain D's comes up, I always think of Don Meyer.
Oh, yeah. I went to Lipscomb and worked there for the first 5 years of my professional life. And the Green Hills Captain D's, if you went there for lunch, which I did from time to time, you would unfailingly see Don Meyer at Captain D's. I think he literally ate there for lunch every day.
I love it. That is awesome.
Where do we go from here? I'm almost losing the words, which is not good when you're a podcast host.
Well, if Norman Vincent Peale can make this positive, God bless him. Because the football situation, it's a rough one right now. I don't think anything particularly good came out of Saturday. I thought they played hard early. I thought kind of the sucker punch that was delivered to Keyshawn Vaughn very early in the game that the TV cameras caught pretty clearly seemed to really fire him up. I thought he ran really hard. They get out to a 14-3 lead, and then boom.
Yeah, like everything else, it was just short-lived. I saw it the way you did. I saw him, he took that hit, and then I thought, ran really hard, and in the end, it just didn't matter.
No, to me, what I saw Saturday was kind of a weight room game. Kentucky just lined up and physically pushed them around, and they didn't look strong enough to handle it.
Oh, they weren't strong enough in any level. That's how I saw it. And he spent the preseason. You can go back. I posted this on our site yesterday. I posted comments that he made before the season, contrasted with comments he made after the Kentucky game. He talked about how they've been doing good work there. They'd worked on tackling. I'm like, well, there's obviously no translation there.
No, I think first of all, there's been a lot of discussion about what Derek put out there after the game, and while some of it's true, I'm not really sure what the purpose of it was. I don't think it helped him at all, and I think he's got to be really careful in these post game conferences because I just don't think he's helping himself to any great degree.
Someone once said something to me that sometimes things can be true, but they're not the truth. And that's kind of how that press conference struck me because, yes, he might say, we don't have a quarterback or we're not strong enough. Okay, those may be true statements, but he's been in charge of the program for 6 years. If it's not his job to fix those things and develop players, then whose is it?
Well, you kind of took that out of my playbook from yesterday when we got into this on the air. First of all, you know full well that did not please the quarterbacks because basically he called them out. And he would not appreciate it if one of them popped off and said, well, if the offensive scheme were better, perhaps we'd be better, kind of stuff. You just don't do that. And so that's the first piece of that is, full well those quarterbacks got together somewhere away from football offices, and they weren't pleased at all. There's no way they were. The second thing is exactly what you said. I'm not sure he needed to be saying that because the responsibility falls on him. He had the luxury, and give him credit for this because he recruited Kyle Shermer, but he had the luxury of Shermer being a terrific quarterback and almost as important, being really durable. And so he had 3 years essentially to go find Kyle Shermer's replacement, and it doesn't appear they were anywhere close.
Well, I'll put it this way, and I'm not speaking out of turn here because I have messages to prove it, which I will not share. But what he said in that press conference got back to his players pretty quickly and did not go over well. And I really wonder what they're going to get against East Tennessee State.
Yeah, I mean, as well as I do, this is rough right now. This is I'm sure, a fractured locker room, on several fronts. And then when your coach does that, I don't see how it can be anything but that. I would hope that somebody has sat down with Derek since then, whether it's Malcolm Turner, a trusted assistant coach, whatever, to say, look, you can't do that. That's just not going to fly. Like we talked about earlier, I'm not sure I know what it was he gained by putting that out there. Past history indicates that some of what he said may be true, but you don't say it. I just don't see what he benefited from. And I certainly don't think throwing his quarterbacks under the bus was a good idea. As I mentioned earlier, he wouldn't appreciate it if one of his quarterbacks popped off and said, well, our scheme sucks. And so, there's sort of, I guess, an unwritten rule in football that you just don't go to places like that as far as ripping your players, whether you do it by name or not. You've lumped a group together, and I don't think he gained anything from it, and I don't really understand why he did it.
Let's go into the mailbag, which is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Are you in the market for auto, motorcycle, home, renters, or landlord insurance? What about life or commercial insurance? Call Josh at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He is my insurance agent. I hope you'll make him yours. Richland Door says, where do you even begin? I see nothing positive on the horizon. Even if VU hires a new coach, the stadium is pathetic. I'm on stage 5 of grief, which is acceptance. The only way I see crawling out of this abyss is to announce a major commitment in football in terms of a new stadium and facilities. Is there word if they are accelerating slash announcing the strategic plan so they can lure a top-notch coaching staff?
Well, I would defer to Chris. That's you with the kind of info you've got as far as the stadium stuff, which you've been very encouraging about in recent weeks. You know, we always feel this way when an administration, when a staff sees the thing bottom out. There probably was some of the same feelings before they hired James Franklin. Franklin was a guy we knew very little about other than he was at Maryland. He had been a coach in waiting, but then they decided to not use that. And what did he do? In the 3 years he was there, he won 11 SEC football games, which ranked him in the top half of the Southeastern Conference during the 3 years he was there. So I know that coaching can make a difference. Do I think there's going to be a coaching change? Yeah, I'm leaning that that's probably what's going to happen. But I'm also really sensitive. I learned when Watson Brown got fired, that's somebody who I was very close friends with, and this just in 30 years later, we're still really good friends. And I know there are families involved in this kind of stuff. And so no matter what you may think, you need to have a level of sensitivity to the fact that there are families involved in this stuff. But also, they know what they're getting into when they choose this as a profession.
Yeah, I second that. I like a lot of those coaches on that staff. Javon Hay and I were friends before he took the job. We've been friends for years. So I'm with you. It's like you have a job to do, but at the same time, you feel for those people involved, and especially the ones that are kind of getting dragged into this whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, Vandy Nash. Before I get to that, I do want to follow up on some things that you said. I still think that they're aiming really high for the stadium plan. Malcolm Turner is. And I think the irony of this whole thing is I think part of it is Derek was pretty safe because of that, because they didn't want to have to go through a coaching search when that wasn't done in terms of how they get to the next guy and what they were able to communicate. Now I think it is almost the opposite. It may be one of the things that forces him out because I think they are getting major pushbacks from donors saying if he's still our coach, it's hard for me to support what you guys are doing. I think this thing is sort of flipped in the last couple of weeks.
I think you're right. The flip probably started around the UNLV game. Nobody saw the level of bad that game brought out. Nobody saw that coming. And so, yeah, the whole thing has shifted considerably.
Okay, the next one from Vandy Nash. What do you think is really going on at McGugin right now?
Well, from a football standpoint, there are probably a lot of assistant coaches on phones looking around at other situations, trying to find out what the landscape is. I mean, that sounds ugly, but that's just the way real life works. And so there's probably some of that going on. There's also probably a little bit of a wave of panic in the football part of it all because, I mean, let's face it, Derek's been a head coach now for 6 years. The pay is certainly better. The perks are better. Life as a head football coach is really good. And there's a possibility that may be going away for him in the very near future. On Malcolm Turner's front, gosh, I've got to think that mentally he's starting to put a list together of people that he'd like to talk to if the situation dictates that happens. And, one of the things right now we don't know is, let's just hypothetically put it out there. What if they play their fanny off against Tennessee? Could that change the perception? I don't know, but it's something you got to put out there.
Dorking says, does Malcolm Turner really have a choice at this stage? The attendance next year will be terrible, probably not even salvageable by a major investment like new concession worker hats. There's another long time joke on our site. Um, I think he nailed it in the question. I don't know what I could add to that.
No, I think you're exactly right. It's a great question. I'm starting to lean to that I don't know how you bring him back, um, short of him having a win over Tennessee on his resume again.
Dor King asks again, what type of coach would you like to see come to Vanderbilt? Do you have any names in mind?
Well, I put two out there that I believe need to be talked to. First of all, Jeff Fisher has made very clear, it seems to me, that there's some interest there. I think Jeff's biggest strength is that he brings kind of a built in fan base. He was very popular as the head coach of the Titans. To be honest, he was the face of that franchise. And so you at least have to talk to him, I think. Sit down and find out, okay, if we were to come in this direction, what kind of a staff would you assemble? What kind of stuff would you run? I think Malcolm probably needs to talk to him. Now, let me just say up front, the name I'm going to throw out there, I'm very biased about because he and I are really good friends, and that's Will Healy, the head coach at Charlotte. Will is young. He's a relentless recruiter. Austin P is reaping the benefits of that right now, and they need both of those qualities. They need, well, let me say this, they really need relentless recruiter. I think that's what Franklin brought to the table. I don't sense that this staff is quite to that level, and they need relentless because as you look at them on the field, it's pretty obvious they need some recruiting help.
Yeah, no, this staff is no comparison to that one, at least in totality. There may be some. The head coach certainly is not. The Will Healy name came up when I talked to someone yesterday who's got some contacts in the coaching profession. And it seems like his star is rising pretty quickly. And I mean, he may be able to get some jobs above Vanderbilt, but he does have a loyalty there. At the same time, I've heard people say, well, I think he might be good, but he might need another year or two of seasoning. So opinions are really split on Will Healy.
Well, here's the thing, uh, and again, anything I say, I'm really biased about. If he gets an interview with Malcolm Turner, and I think he should, he'll take care of the rest of it. I've got that kind of confidence in Will's abilities. Will was a relentless and tireless fundraiser for Austin P football. Anybody who knows much about that situation knows that when he went in there, they had nothing. And he very quickly got out amongst the people, if you want to call it that, and started raising pretty significant dollars for Austin P football. That is one of his real strengths. I was talking to a friend about Will, and again, everything I say here is biased because he and I are friends. But Will Healy has an it factor to him. People gravitate to him, and I don't know how else to say it other than people gravitate to him. They believe in him. He has an infectious personality. I think they would really miss the boat if they don't at least sit down and talk to him.
Well, I'm kind of waiting to see how things pan out at quarterback, and even at the best, they're going to have a new quarterback next year. It'll either be maybe Cade Fortin, who's the UNC transfer, or it'll be Ken Seals out of Texas, who a lot of people like. But I think Ken, if Mason is not the coach, and I'm not saying you make a decision based on this, you've got to do what is best long term for the program. I'm not sure Ken will be at Vanderbilt if Mason and Godowski are not at Vanderbilt. And who knows? He may not be anyway. I don't know where that is, but they are staring a quarterback disaster in the face potentially. Well, I mean, probably it's just what
Yeah.
how what we're just going to be arguing what degree. So they kind of need somebody, I think, and I don't mean to be just demeaning of anybody here or Will Heatley, but they almost need somebody who can fake it until they can make it. And that may be the situation that somebody comes into. And in that case, he may be exactly the right guy for the job based on what you're telling me.
Well, I just have a confidence in Will. Um, Again, to put this out here, I'm really biased, so take what I have to say with a grain of salt. But number one, I think he will knock it out of the park in an interview setting. I have no doubt about that. I know he's a relentless recruiter. I think Austin Peay's reaping the benefits right now of what he did while he was there. And I know that of him as a fundraiser that is really impressive for a young guy. He's got a lot of positive qualities to him, and I just feel like whether they hire him or not, it's certainly not my call. That becomes Malcolm Turner and whoever the close associates are around him. But I would not hesitate to tell Malcolm Turner, you need to meet this guy. You need to interview him.
Pedor says, what is the advantage in firing Mason now versus later? What is the advantage in waiting until the season is over? Could the lack of interim options on a staff be a factor here?
I don't think so. I think they'll probably try to do the right thing and not make any decisions until, officially until the Tennessee game is over. Um, I guess there's an advantage in that you go ahead and get the word out officially that you're looking. But I mean, look, these coaches in this business, they're not stupid. They see what's going on and they're lining up their ducks, just like Malcolm Turner perhaps could be lining up his ducks, getting his ducks in a row and move on.
Yeah, the early signing period thing throws a real wrench into it. I mean, just like the facilities thing did, the timing of all this could not be
Yeah,
worse because you're looking at just a couple of weeks to, I mean, heck, just the interview process and going through that and getting background checks on coaches and all the things that you have to do at Vanderbilt. I mean, my
right.
goodness, you better make sure those kids are committed to the school and not to the coach because this is.
So it's
I don't. I mean, I don't know what else to say. The picture's right in front of us.
Well, it's a really good point you bring up. Um, I guess there's a part of me that doesn't really understand why the rule is in place. Is it? Am I right? December 21st.
Yeah, I think that's the date, and I actually like it because being in this from the side, and I've called recruits. I haven't done that in a while. I've got Sean Williams does all that for us now, but I still follow it. And this whole thing, it's just you commit to a school for months, and then you're committed, and then other schools are ringing your phone off the wall and trying to bring you in late, and it's confusing. It's if a kid knows where he wants to play, let him sign and get it over with. And that way you don't
Yeah.
have to deal with people on my end calling you and asking you and messaging you and all those things. I think the rule is actually a good thing. It gives a kid a choice who knows where he wants to go and can do it. I don't have a problem with the rule and the timing, but this is when, as a Vanderbilt, it's awful timing.
Well, I'm a little cynical about the recruiting process, I guess, because the other thing I see is that schools play both sides against the middle as well. A kid will commit and they work out all the plans. We want you to show up in mid-semester and all this kind of stuff. But then they're out looking around, and if they get somebody that they think is hot on them that's better than who they've sort of committed to, they'll screw that kid over in a heartbeat as well. And so I'm a little bit cynical about the whole recruiting process. It's a meat market.
No, I couldn't agree more. And that's another reason I like the early signing period. It's a truth serum. It's okay. Well, I'm committed.
Right.
Are you slow playing me? Are you willing to take my signature on December the
Sure.
21st or whatever the date is? I think this is why this is a good idea. I think it protects the kids as well. Let's see, moving on, because I know you've got to go in a second. My recollection, this is from Ann Arbor Door, is that Andy Ludwig's announcement that he was leaving took place after the Big Three announced they were staying. Do you think there's malcontent with the fact that they would have had a less seasoned offensive coordinator for their final season, impacting team performance on the offensive side of the ball this year? I will say this. I think that the seeds for Andy Ludwig's departure were sown probably around Halloween last year. I was hearing he's going to be gone. They're going to move on. I don't have any evidence that Vanderbilt put up a fight when he left. So I do think that the statement contained in his question is true, and I'll let you tackle the question.
Players are usually the last ones to really know what's going on in inner office. Probably there are occasions where they get the info, but oftentimes they're the last to know. And so there may well be, those three, it's obvious, are not real happy with how things have gone. I can't blame them because they had NFL futures to consider, and yet they made the decision, to come back. I understand why they're not real happy. I do.
Couple more before I let you go. Let's see. This from AZ Door. The Hustler ran an interesting article with 5 potential coaching replacements. Do you think Saturday really represents a job interview for Randy Sanders? I've not seen that article. I don't know who was in it. I don't know the context on Randy Sanders. You may not either, but I'll let you take the question from here.
Well, if he's got an interest, it certainly is an early job interview. I don't know Randy well enough to know, what his feelings would be about this. Obviously, he has University of Tennessee ties. He played there. And I'm sure Philip Fulmer had a lot to do with him getting this job. I guess really all I could say is if he has an interest, sure is an early job interview.
Yeah. Oh, okay. One more. I think this is the last one, George. Okay. Harley Hog 44. What exactly is Vanderbilt waiting for to either name a change in direction or support for who we already have? Doesn't this hurt recruiting or hurt potential coordinators Derek Mason might be looking at?
I don't really know how to answer it because I'm not sure. I think Malcolm Turner's trying to do the right thing and let this play out as far as he can. That's one consideration because obviously Derek Mason right now is his football coach. And as for being able to tell potential, candidates for jobs, here's what we have planned. I'm sure by that point, if there is the need for a change, that Malcolm, will be ready to do whatever needs to be done. That was a really bad answer to a pretty good question.
Well, it's just hard to have answers to some of these things right now.
Great questions. You get terrific mailbag stuff.
I have a community of some pretty smart people.
Oh, I can tell.
Yeah, I do. It's interesting what comes up on boards and in these mailbag segments. And with that, George, I will let you go. I want to give you a chance to promote your show, give out your Twitter handle, anything like that before we end the podcast today.
Yeah, you can hear the show that I do Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. on 560 a.m. and 95.9 FM, or you can go to the WNSR app. And shockingly, I do have a Twitter handle, and it's George Plaster TN. Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it, indeed. George, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you again next week.
Chris, thank you. Look forward to it.
Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast. If you would, do us a favor, please, wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a nice rating and review if you feel so inclined. That helps out our podcast. That helps people find us. That helps keep us in business. Anyway, thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast. We will come back with more episodes later in the week.